brand new video giving a fuller picture of the police shooting in lower downtown.
Denver police shared their story a month ago.
The subject eventually pulled out a handgun and held it in a manner that the muzzle of the gun was pointed in the direction of the officers who were on Larimer Street.
But their own body cameras show they left out some details.
We're digging deeper into the moments before Denver police shot an armed man, surrounded by crowds of people.
Tonight, an investigation emerging as Denver's DA turns the case over to the public.
Did something go wrong? Yeah, 6 people additionally that shouldn't have been injured got injured that night.
Good evening, and thank you for watching Denver 7 News on Local 3. I'm Jessica Porter.
And I'm Amy Wattis. Newly released body camera video is raising more questions after 3 Denver police officers shot an armed suspect last month in the Lodo area, hitting 6 innocent bystanders.
Now, this comes as Denver District Attorney Beth McCann announces the beginning of a grand jury investigation. Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kovaleski is breaking down that video for us tonight, showing the armed suspect throw the gun on the ground and put his hands up before police fired their weapons.
It's the video many have been waiting for. Real-time video from cameras mounted on street lights and body-worn cameras. We now have a better idea of exactly what happened. You're going to look inside a 33-second window from when tensions escalated until shots were fired. Let's start from up above. A camera on a street light at 20th and Larimer. It's a little after 1:30, a Sunday morning last month. Large crowds spilling out onto the street, the bars letting out. Cameras show the eventual suspect, Jordan Waddy, gets involved in a fist fight. You can see police moving in, and seconds later, Waddy looking to get away. As he walks through the crowd, 5 officers circle around the parked vehicles. Seconds later, body-worn cameras show how the shooting unfolded. Here's another perspective. Here's how it looked from the camera on the streetlight. You can see the crowd's reaction. Now let's add context and slow it down. 3 days after the shooting, police told us the suspect, after the fight, when confronted by police, ignored verbal orders and walked through the crowd, apparently trying to avoid police. Now, when we slow down that video, it might explain the district attorney's decision to call for a grand jury. When the suspect gets between the 2 cars and the officer approaches, the suspect appears to grab his gun by the barrel, and you can see he throws it away and then puts his hands up before the shots were fired. More context now. Watch in slow motion how before the shooting, the suspect appears to tug on his gun 2 or 3 times before he throws it away. In addition, we timed that critical moment, and from the instant the gun leaves the suspect's hand until the officer's gun fires the shot, 5 frames of video elapsed. That's 1/6 of 1 second. Here's the commander's response to our question 3 days after the shooting.
Commander, recognizing it was a split-second decision, sitting here now 3 days later, could this have been handled better?
I think the officers did everything they could at the time. Looking back, we say 6 people got injured, and I think you'd have to conclude something could have been done differently. But in the moment, they were doing what they could to prevent violence, to stop and ensure safety downtown.
DPD said today that because of that grand jury investigation, it has elected not to comment, to respect the legal process. Now, Denver's DA Beth McCann included the following statement when she announced that grand jury investigation. The public's interest in this particular shooting incident is understandably high, McCann said, and she added, for the community to trust in the outcome from this incident, it is important that independent members of the community review the facts, evidence, and law regarding whether these officers should be criminally charged. Until the grand jury's work is complete, my office will have no further comment on this matter. So now the process begins and escalates. The grand jury will also likely hear testimonials from eyewitnesses. No timeline on a grand jury decision was announced today. I'm Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kovaleski.
Tony, thank you. Tonight, we are also hearing from the attorneys representing 3 of the innocent bystanders injured in the shooting. In the statement, attorneys say Denver officers, quote, acted with extreme recklessness by intentionally firing live rounds toward a dense crowd. They added the footage further shows the suspect Jordan Waddy threw his own firearm in apparent compliance with officers' commands. During a press conference last month, Denver police said officers did not announce they were about to shoot to the crowd. DPD would also not specify if the innocent victims from this shooting were shot or hit with ricochets or other debris. 2 of the victims we spoke with had no doubts that they were shot.
I knew pretty quickly within a few seconds that I had been hit because I could feel the warmth of the blood going down my arm. Looked up at him as we were still moving, told him I had been shot.
I heard the second gunshot, and that's when I felt like I got hit with the baseball, like 100 miles an hour type of thing. We think that we're safe, but situations like this makes you think that, makes you feel like you'll never be safe again.
Attorneys for the victims also applaud the Denver DA for beginning a grand jury investigation, adding that they want to see the 3 officers indicted and tried.
The Denver Police Union has put out a statement tonight. It says, quote, the men and women of the Denver Police Department are often forced to make split-second decisions in their efforts to protect themselves and the community. It also says they look forward to a fair, impartial, and thorough investigation. We wanted to get a better sense of how police officers are trained to respond in these situations. Rob Harris talked to a criminal justice expert. And Rob, a few split-second decisions determined the outcome that night?
Yeah, and Amy, that's why we wanted to sift through the body camera footage moment by moment with someone who has a background in this law enforcement tactical training. It all happened so quickly that night, like we've been saying. It was about a 1/6 of a second between the time Jordan Waddy threw his gun to the ground and the first shot was fired by a Denver police officer. That was a point that Stacey Hervey stressed several times in our conversation. She's a former patrol officer, and she's now a professor of criminal justice at Metropolitan State University of Denver. She says with more violence in downtown Denver and mass shootings across the country, officers are on high alert.
I think the tough thing when someone reaches for a gun and you spot a gun is just how short a time period that can occur in. So within 1 to 2 seconds, when we can watch it and rewatch it, it's a much different view than when an officer is observing that, because the suspect has to act and then the officer has to react. It then takes a second or 2 for the brain to unreact and stop whatever movement has been put into place. And I think that's where it can get really tricky when these things are, he threw the gun, because we can watch this video 3 or 4 times versus the officer seeing in real time. Real time is much different.
Now, there are 2 other key questions that I had for Hervey. How the bystanders change the calculation for officers in these split-second decisions, and also why so many shots were fired even after Waddy had fallen to the ground. So tonight at 10 o'clock on Denver 7, I'm going to share more of my conversation with her about this police response and what she thinks the city and the bars downtown could do to make things safer. Jessica?
Rob, thank you. The suspect police shot, Jordan Waddy, survived. He's charged with assault and 3 counts of possession of a weapon by a previous offender. If you would like to see the full body camera video for yourself, you can watch the raw footage from multiple angles together as it unfolded on thedenverchannel.com.
The polls have closed in Wyoming, and incumbent Republican Representative Liz Cheney is fighting to save her U.S. House seat. Representative Cheney's team is bracing for a loss to Harriet Hageman, who is backed by former President Donald Trump. With 14% of the vote in, Hageman is leading by 64%. Now, it's still too early to count. Cheney has been losing momentum among some Republicans in the past few months. She is currently a member of the House committee investigating the riots on January 6th. In Alaska, 19 candidates are on the ballot for the U.S. Senate seat, including incumbent Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. Alaska voters will also decide on candidates to fill the U.S. House seat left vacant by late Representative Don Young, who died back in March.
President Biden signed a massive $740 billion bill into law today, calling it a once-in-a-generation investment. The Inflation Reduction Act focuses on health care by capping certain prescription drug costs and helping Americans pay for health insurance. The bill is also the largest climate investment in U.S. history, allocating $370 billion, including tax credits for solar panels and electric vehicles. The White House claims these incentives will cut greenhouse gas emissions by 40% from 2005 levels. Thieves vandalizing cars at RTD stations.
First thing I noticed was the smell of gas.
The rest? Well, you know the drill.
People doing things like this, but you can't just take what's not yours.
We still have some pretty good showers showing up on the radar, and there's more coming up in the 7 days.
Plus, neglected horses finding a new life after being rescued, all thanks to your help.
You and your viewers have been so generous, and we're greatly appreciative.